It's a great day for work here at the Happy Healthy Workplace podcast. I'm Kimberly Ficklin, your host. And every week we talk to professionals just like you all around the world because we want to find out what they do to create a profitable business, the kind of business where people really want to work. Hello and happy healthy day, everyone. Today our guest is Lisa Fain. And Lisa is the CEO of the Center for Mentoring Excellence and an expert in the intersection of cultural competency and mentoring. Her passion for diversity and inclusion work fuels her strong conviction that leveraging differences creates a better workplace and drives better business results. Lisa brings her energy, enthusiasm, and engagement to any group, facilitating lively workshops and training and delivering interactive speeches with practical steps that can be implemented right away. For almost a decade, Lisa practiced law in the Chicago office of a major multinational where she counseled employers on creating inclusive policies and practices. While in that role, she served as a master trainer, training thousands of employees at a variety of companies on how to create a better workplace. Lisa also founded Vista Coaching, a division of Center for Mentoring Excellence, which provides group coaching for professional women looking to design and live their best lives. She lives in Seattle, Washington with her husband and 2 teenage daughters. Welcome, Lisa.
I'm so happy to be here, Kimberly. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. I am really excited about our chat today because I've always been intrigued by this subject, but I've always struggled with a clear understanding of the mentor-mentee relationship. So, Lisa, let's just dive right in. First, if you could share with us, please, what a mentor is.
Yeah. And let me just say, you're not alone in your confusion about it. It's really a common confusion. So a mentor is somebody who, best way I can explain it is that a mentor is not a sage on the stage. A mentor is a guide on the side. And here's what I mean by that. So, the common view of a mentor that I grew up with, and maybe you grew up with too, is that, you sit at the feet of this person who sort of pours in all of their knowledge and experience about their own journey and how you should conduct yourself, right? That's the sage on the stage. And that's not really the role of a mentor. A mentor is the guide on the side, somebody who facilitates a mentee's learning, can help share their own experience, but really helps tailor conversation and development to what a mentee needs by getting to know the mentee and, asking really, really good questions. I have a lot of people who are asked to be mentors who say, what am I going to do? I don't know all the answers to all the questions. And what I always tell them is, you don't have to know all the answers. You just have to ask really good questions and be a really good listener. And that's kind of a paradigm shift for a lot of people.
Well, I guess that would be interesting because when you brought it up, the first thing I thought was, well, then you have a mentor.
Yeah. First of all, I've just written an article about the CEOs. People in the C-suite need to have mentors too. Everybody needs to have a mentor. It's funny that you asked that question, Kimberly, because I'm actually in the process of looking for 2 mentors right now. And I have a lot of informal mentors, but I'm looking for 2 formal mentors. I'm really trying to drink my own Kool-Aid, so to speak, or walk my own walk. Meaning like articulating what it is I want to learn. And the reason I'm looking for 2 is I'm looking for 2 really different things. One is going to be someone to help me in my own thought leadership, and another one in building the kind of business that I want to build. And it's wonderful to be able to kind of engage in the process that I so often encourage mentees to do now that I'm sort of in between mentors myself.
It's really a great point because we can all learn. We're all ever learning, or we should be anyway, right? So if the mentor is asking that question, then maybe it's just that they need a mentee to help them. I love that. So here is the question. Well, and actually, let me back up here just a little bit. Is that I have somebody that I've wanted to be my mentor for a few years. And I stalk this person on LinkedIn and all the things that this person does. And even reached out one time and said, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. And this person said, sure, what are you thinking? And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then I never talked to the person again. I'm no joke. And I still would love to have this person be my mentor. But I already have somebody in mind that I could ask, and we can get to that moving forward. Let's just first think about, or maybe you could share with us, is how to find a mentor. So you're looking for these 2 very specific mentors. What is your process by which to find those 2 people?
Yeah. Well, the very first thing is to identify what it is you want the mentor for. What do you want to learn? Right? That's step 1. Step 2 is to start to build relationships before you ask for mentoring. I absolutely love your story, and I'm dying to dive in and talk more about that after I answer this question, because you got lucky that you said, will you be my mentor? And they said, sure, right? I mean, that happens more rarely than trying to figure out how do you approach the person in the first place. So part of it is building relationships, building connections first. One of the things that I'm doing is sharing with people the kind of person that I want to be a mentor, the kind of skills, so that even if this person isn't in my network, I actually haven't identified who these people will be. I just know what I want, so that people I know will know people who I know. It's kind of like dating a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is, who do you know that might be a good match for this? So that's thing one. And thing two is, one of the things that does hold mentees back is they're not really sure what they want. And so thinking through that can be really, really helpful. And we can talk about ways to do that. When a name comes up, either through LinkedIn, somebody I know or somebody I know suggests somebody else, usually what I do is I reach out to connect first. Because just like you wouldn't ask somebody to marry you on the first date, you don't necessarily want to ask somebody to be your mentor without having built a foundational relationship. So a lot of times I'll, reach out. I might say something like, Kimberly, I noticed your profile on LinkedIn. We share so and so and so. And I'm actually really intrigued what it's like to build a podcast. We're in similar industries and I'd love to hear more about your work and share some of my experiences. As opposed to jumping right in and saying, Kimberly, will you be my mentor? Which might creep you out a little bit.
Right. Well, let me preface that by saying I did know this person before.
Yes,
So
I know. I got that. I'm sort of using the example.
Of course. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah. But I do think that people are always honored when you ask them that question. It's really just a matter of timing. There are people who pride themselves on continuously mentoring others and wouldn't be creeped out at all by that question. But you don't yet have a relationship. It's always good to make that connection because not everybody who's had great experience makes a good mentor. And you want to make sure that whomever you're reaching out to is somebody who's going to have the time, who's going to have the ability to listen as opposed to just tell, who's going to take an interest in you and in whom you will be interested and to whom you'll be motivated to show up for mentoring meetings and really put in the effort. Because though it's work that's worth it, mentoring really is work. It takes preparation and it takes time. So you as the mentee want to be as choosy as the mentor.
That would make perfect sense because, well, just like anything in life, you need to know it's a good fit for it to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like how you liken that to dating or a marriage because it is a relationship just like any other. So let's talk about the very specific role of the mentor, and then we can move into the mentee.
The role of a mentor is to guide on the side. So there's really three things that a mentor needs to do for his or her mentee. Support the mentee on achievement of their goals, help the mentee create a vision, which might even mean, by the way, helping the mentee determine what her goals are. Support, vision, and working towards that vision, and then challenging the mentee. So a good mentor pushes a mentee to take risks that are just outside of his or her comfort zone.
That makes sense. Sounds like one of the best coaches I have right now.
Yeah.
And it's true. And she is my business coach, but definitely forms a mentorship relationship with me. So just based off of the things that you just said. So now going from there, what is the mentee's role?
The mentee really needs to show up ready to learn. And that means able to listen, able to take feedback, able to ask questions. The mentee needs to be willing to be pushed outside of their comfort zone. The mentee needs to be receptive to feedback. And then I would say both for mentor and mentee to get just a little vulnerable because you really want to be able to share authentically. If you see that there's challenges, if you're having struggles, and for a mentor, it's important to show the vulnerability too, because you really want the mentee to be able to relate to you and not think, my mentor's journey was so easy. Things are so easy for them. No, you really want that, have that relatability, and getting a little bit vulnerable, sharing what some of your struggles are is really actually important for both mentor and mentee.
Well, that makes more sense. At least it clears it up for me what those roles are. And I guess that we just can go into what each brings to the table because this is where I've gotten stuck is that I've often been told that the mentee needs to know what they're bringing to the mentor. But then I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I don't know what I'm bringing. Like, I know what I need from the mentor, or maybe I think I know, but I know why I'm seeking them out, but I'm not quite sure what I bring to them. So what does each bring to the table?
Yeah, I want to answer your question by starting with this, which is this is so common a question, Kimberly, because there's always going to be some kind of power differential, right? Like the reason that we seek out a mentor is because it's someone who's had more experience, who we view as more credentialed or whom we really respect. And so often we hold back from asking for a mentor or showing up fully or asking our mentor questions, asking our mentor to give of his or her time because we're afraid that they're not getting anything from it. And mentors tell us, at the Center for Learning Excellence, we interview hundreds of mentors and mentees. And what mentors tell us that they get from the relationship is as much or more than the mentees. They say they become better leaders, they become more culturally aware, they get better perspectives, they do better at their jobs, they can manage their team better, and feels good to be able to give back. So it's not just it feels like a good thing to do, it also has tangible benefits for them. So the mentee is really giving that gift to the mentor.
What you're saying is I don't need to show up or pre-think of what it is that I'm bringing to the table, but that I can just, I don't want to say make the assumption, but if the mentor says yes, then they're gaining something from it by me showing up, like you said, showing up ready to learn and then implementing.
Yeah, that's true. And when you get into the relationship and you start the relationship, you're going to talk about the relationship and what it's going to look like so that you make sure that that actually happens. Because if you talk up front about what you want to get out of the relationship and what you want the relationship to look like, then the mentor and the mentee can recreate the relationship together. And the mentor will be able to get those benefits. So I wouldn't worry so much about what am I bringing to the table. I would say I'm going to go in this with the intention to learn, ask my mentor questions, to think about where I want to go and to do my homework in between. And through that, the mentor will get out of it all of those things that I mentioned.
Well, that makes sense to me because I love collaboration. I love working with people and I love to see people succeed. For a mentorship, me being a mentor would fill my love bucket, basically,
Yeah.
just because I really like to do that. Okay, so here on the podcast, we are talking about workplaces. I always want to bring everything back around to in the workplace. And I can definitely do that here because I have witnessed. Well, first of all, I'll go back to I have had a mentor in the workplace that was not my official mentor, just a very good supervisor that was more of a mentor than a supervisor. And that's great. So I know the difference. But I've also been privy to seeing workplaces where they decide they're going to set up a mentorship program and they ask directors and higher ups to come and be mentors. And some of them agree, but they tend to be people that are either report under them, right? So they're mentoring somebody who's a direct report. It often doesn't work because it's hard for some people to be able to separate themselves from helping this person grow and actually making them accountable for their work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you hit the nail on the head. In fact, it's not best practices to have a supervisor be the mentor. Although all managers should have mentoring skills, it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be a formal mentor because mentorship is about long-term development. And maybe as the mentee, it's best for you to leave the organization or leave the role, but should not be focused on day-to-day performance. And a supervisor definitely has a conflict of interest because ultimately what they're accountable for, it would be your performance and how you do in that job, even if that job is not the right job for you.
It's a situation that's very tricky. And it's not even just a direct report like this very specific one that I'm aware of is it was a director and then there was a manager under that director and then an employee who went into this leadership mentee program. And although it wasn't direct, like it wasn't their supervisor, it was their supervisor's supervisor. So ultimately it still ended up being this chain of command and it turned out really bad. In the beginning it was great because everybody had all these ideas as well as going back to what you said, setting boundaries, what are expectations. I'm completely unsure that was ever done. And the fact that it turned out the way that it did would enlighten me to the fact that it probably was never discussed. It just was this great thing. Oh, that the company thought this can be so much fun. This will be great. We'll do this. And there was no guidelines. And like there was that chain of command issue. And in the workplace, saying that all managers, leaders, directors should have mentorship ability. But let's say you do want to set up some type of a mentorship program in your workplace. What's the best process by which to do that in which you can alleviate the kind of that nepotism, I guess, of people in the same departments and supervisors and whatnot?
Yeah, It's a great question. And the answer is not the same for everybody, but I'll tell you some of the things that best practices have in common. If you are working in an organization and you want to set up a mentoring program, put together what we call a MAT, Mentorship Advisory Team. It's a team of 4 to 5 people who will be responsible for communication about the program, who will help oversee matching, and who will help kind of make sure everybody's trained, up to speed, all of that. That's sort of best practice number one. The second thing to think about, and it's always surprising to people, but one of our clients in particular is kind of a poster child for this, of matching mentors and mentees totally across departments. So maybe somebody who's young in tech, I may be matched with somebody who's in marketing as a mentor. And that goes along the lines with what I was talking about in terms of not having all the answers, just having the right questions. That's been huge for building really trusting relationships, getting more exposure throughout the organization, really been huge for diversity within this particular organization and others we've been with. If the organization doesn't want to do matching themselves, there's a great technology for that, but also they can set criteria by which people should choose a mentor. So you might say you need to have 2 levels between mentor and mentee. You need to have nobody in the same chain of command. They can decide whether they want to encourage matching across disciplines and that kind of thing. Because if you have too much sameness of experience or anything else, you're not going to be pushed out of your comfort zone quite the same way. So that kind of expanding beyond the direct discipline, if you will, can be really, really helpful for success of a mentoring program.
I love that answer for 2 reasons. I was taking some notes here while you were talking. And one is that you said no one size fits all. I say that all the time on this podcast and on social media when people are like, recently they said, oh, Twitter went to everybody works from home. And I was like, everybody doesn't want to work from home. So that doesn't really work all across the board. So I do love that you said one size does not fit all, because I am the true believer in each business is unique. The second thing that you said, creating a cross-functional mentoring team, that is what I thrive at. When I'm working with clients, I create cross-functional teams to help them design internal culture and well-being programs. And my biggest soapbox, I guess you would say, is that it has to be cross-functional. You need to take people from different departments and different levels and bring them all together so that you're hearing all the voices of your business rather than just the leaders of your business or just the employees. I love this cross-functional mentoring. That's really good because, again, in the instance I was bringing up, there was somebody in the same department, and you as a mentee, I'm sure that there's many times when you're going to be very vulnerable, because some of the mentorship, I would imagine, has to do with even just maybe mindset. Yeah, so the mentor might be doing some things to make you feel better about situations happening at work or whatever, right? But if you're being vulnerable to somebody that, like, your direct report or even in the same department, it's very, very hard, I would imagine, for the mentee to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. It's so exciting to me when I see those matches across departments. I don't know if you find this, Kimberly, when you work with these cross-functional teams, but you're getting people in a room who are trained to think very differently. Engineers are engineers because they're problem solving along a certain plane. Lawyers are problem solving around a different plane. HR people around a different plane. And you start to see like the power of innovation, the power of mentoring pairs thinking differently. What if you tried this? What if you tried that? And the willingness to explore things is so increased because they're not burdened by the convention of whatever's are currently happening in the department.
Absolutely. And the fact that when you create a cross-functional team, you take them out of their environment too. And you give them like just this space, right? Where all they have to do is what you just suggested. And, I learned this a long time ago when I taught at a leadership summit. I learned this from someone else who was teaching there, and they teach the CVI, Core Values Index. And when we start to understand that everybody doesn't think the same, is when we start to realize that what brain power, what brain trust we actually hold within each one of our businesses, and how all the people that work in it are really the ones that have all of that knowledge. So one person can't ever be the one that can figure this all out. And one department can't be it, and not all the higher ups can't do it. And like I just said, like, it really, I'm so into cross-functional, and I love the cross-functional mentoring.
You said something that's really powerful in the mentoring space as well, which is You said when you have cross-functional teams, you take them out of your environment, and it's really important to create space for that. And that's super true in the mentoring context as well. So any successful mentoring relationship has to create space for the mentoring relationship. It's, even virtual, right? It's like close the email, move all the other regular work stuff away. I always encourage people who are paper people like me to have a separate mentoring notebook. It can be a separate file on OneNote if you take notes electronically, but to have sacred space for mentoring, to bring a little woo-woo in there, right? It's just really creating a different space. All right, right now we're going to focus on development. We're going to focus on learning and creating a relationship together. And that is really, really powerful. And the people who use that mindset are head and shoulders more successful than those who just try to kind of squeeze it in and view it as something that happens in the ordinary course.
Mm-hmm. We talk here on the podcast pretty much every episode about creating space, because that's really what this is about. Because we're like, everybody's always like, what do I do? How do I do it? Create some space for it and then just see how it works out. But we are getting to the close here. This has been a really enlightening conversation for me, even specifically because, again, I had my own questions about this and you've definitely answered them for me. But Lisa, in closing, is there anything that you think needed to be said that we did not say?
I would just say successful mentoring relationships are a bit of work. They are always important, but never feel urgent. And it's always work that is rewarding for both the mentor and the mentee. And the time to do it is now. It's always now.
Thank you for sharing that closing bit. I like the time is now. And I'm just going to real quick go back to this quote that you said several times here that I love, that a mentor is not a sage on the stage, but a guide on the side. Hashtag Lisa Fain. So thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Lisa. It really was very informative. I know I'm not the only one that needed to have these questions answered. And now Lisa has given you some really great tools that you can take back right now. You can begin right now. And if you're confused at all about how to begin a mentorship program in your workplace, I'm sure Lisa would be very, very happy to help you with that. And you'll be able to connect with her by checking out the show notes for the links to Lisa and all of the resources that we shared in this show. This is now the close of the Happy Healthy Workplace podcast. And if you love what you hear on this podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast player. Have a happy, healthy day. That's a wrap for today. The Happy Healthy Workplace podcast is now complete. Be sure to subscribe and join us weekly for secrets, solutions, or strategies that help you create a profitable business where people really want to work. This is Kimberly Ficklin, wishing you a happy, healthy day.